and hopefully some of you are here because of the success of my dramedy. So, this is my description of SI, and I have a whole video going through this, but some of the key points, and I'll be getting first. If we look at this description of the farmer here, the advantages and disadvantages of this type are well brought out in the reserved and conservative farmer, with his care for his land and his beasts, and his tendency to carry on everything, down to the smallest detail, in the same old way. He also shows a passive resistance to anything new, which can be overcome by that. So that's the behavior. What causes that behavior? It's the natural conservatism and a sort of a search for safety in structure, which is different from, if you want to pause that, you consider it, because it's quite nuanced about the difference in the structure focus of NTs versus SJs. And so if you just think about some of these values, these primary values: security, safety, self-preservation, physical health, belonging, and to fit in. Key values behind SI. Now let's move on to, hopefully it doesn't go crash, because it might go poof, and it just has. It will be back in a moment, folks. Oh, and that's that bit there from, someone posted this as an example of natural. Oh no, why won't it share? Share screen. That is. There we go. Right, so just a bit there about the traditional Russian saying, measure it 10 times before you cut. So to be absolutely sure, this is different from the artisan temperament, the artisan instinct. So that one about the farmer and the care for the animals, down to everything in that is very slot 1 SI. Now let's talk a bit about slot 1. So slot 1 in my model, it's valued, it's default, and it's a club function. So in this case, for the SI DOMs, we've got the ST functions are the club functions in ISTJ, and the SF functions are the club functions in ISFJ. But let's get back to ISFJ. So that function, so slot 1 ticks 3 boxes. It's default. What I mean by default is the SI DOM is by default and definition an introverting type, a JKIP, a Jung-Keirsey Individuation Pattern. That's the term I'll use, JKIP. It's an introverting JKIP. And so by introverting, I mean here, subjectifying and internalizing. And so all of the supra functions, instincting, thinking, feeling, and intuiting, are all by default have that subjective component to those. So overall it's subjective, and you've got this SI DOM, and so when we're describing the reserved guardian, and it's a wheelhouse function as well, and in terms of columns, it's the wheelhouse functions of the guardians, which are either going to be SI and TE or SI and FE. And then you've got the strong unvalued functions, hopefully that bar will go away, which I call unsung allies. And then you've got the lesser valued functions in the counter club, but I'll get onto that later. But again, here in slot 1, SI in the slot 1. Here's a bit more on the subjective factor that Jung wrote about, and then I'll talk about that in relation to the SI DOM. So the subject. So Jung definitely meant that introverting was subjective, and he would talk about extroverting being objective and going towards the object, but he meant the stimulus, because sound is not an object. So the SI Dom. So it's leading with this subjective sensory instinctum. And so what is SI like when it's in that first slot? Well, it's going to lead to very much a conservatism, a small c conservatism. And what you're going to get there is going through those values, that safety first. And so what is safe? Well, what is safe is what happened in the past. And so to draw on what happened in the past, you're going to go towards memory. So SI conscripts memory. And so guardians have this past focus, and they want consistency with the past. Or rather, or more accurately, they want consistency with what worked, and what worked was in the past. That is reassuring to the guardian. Whereas the artisan gets bored and wants more novel sensory experience. The guardian loves being in the comfort zone of familiarity. And so going back to that quote, carry on everything down in the same old way. And this ethos can be summed up with, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right, so again, so SI in, and it's just the overriding function of this small c conservatism. Now, also getting towards other sub-functions of SI, you've got the and let's like I can refer to that graphic. Actually, I shouldn't do that because it may have a tendency to break. Most likely to use the make regular. An SI assertive, this is more likely to be used by ISTJ than ISFJ, because ISFJ is an accommodator and ISTJ is a contender. Now this SI imaginative, so this is going to come through in their sort of mainly in their reader. They love the sensory description. They love. Now I can tell you a joke from Young Sheldon that relies on mental imagery, and it's actually better that I read it out. I just got to make sure I can find it. No, one moment. JCF and humor type. Right, here we go. Right then, folks. I'm going to read this through. So Sheldon is worried that he's got head lice. And this is what he says. Yes, I did. And now they're cavorting at the base of my hair follicles like dancing hippies at the Redwood National Forest. So there we go. The mental, that will appeal to guardians as they imagine the hair follicles like the tree trunks. And also saying redwood as well helps the mental imagery. Guardians love mental imagery. So yeah, they have a rich sensory imagination. But if it's described, they can imagine it. So they love novels with a lot of description, such as the Song of Ice and Fire novels, which can have so much sensory description that it can put off people of other JKIPs. Right, other temperaments. So the SI DOMs will have that part, the SI imaginative part of SI, which is the Jungian SI, the subjective sensation. And it also shows up in, this subjective side shows up in Qualia, see that website. It shows up in Nardi's book with the, again, the ability to visualize and all of that. And then the SI harmonizer, this is more likely to come from the accommodator guardian, the ISFJ. So this attending to the bodily needs of others, especially in nursing. Now, in contrast, so that's SI with FE as well. NI with FE is attending to someone's psychological health. So think of the counselor, which is what INFJ is good at. So this is and so here the protector, and then the SI harmonizer, as you can read there. And so the SI Dom does this kind of SI. It's the harmonizing kind of SI, more so when it's ISFJ because it's naturally accommodating. And both are going to do the imaginative when they're reading. When they like their mental imagery and humor, and mental imagery is bigged up a lot by Jean Perret in his book The New Comedy Writing, but Jean Perret might be an NTP, so he's going to value NE and SI and TI and FE. And then stabilize what worked, will to schedule and impose order. That's more so with the ISTJ because it is contending and it is an inspector, and it's more, I don't believe you should do it like it. So if you see the characters of E.L. Wisty by Peter Cook, now you didn't want to sort of like the interfering nosy neighbour that sort of tells someone, now I don't believe you wanted to do that. You don't want to do that like that. You want to do that like this. ISTJ. So that is what SI is like when it's in slot 1. So now I can talk more about the... So when it's in slot 2... No. When it's in slot 2, I have to go over to the graphic where it shows it in slot 2, which is that one. There we go. So we've got SI here, and it's situational. But again, it's in the wheelhouse. And it's always sort of going to be in there. Actually, I can talk about Kristen here, because I can give an example where she's using TE more than SI in when she is there's a bit here where I have a quote from ESTJ Kristen. These guardians are like gold dust in typology circles. They're over about 50% of the general population, because there's only 10% people who are abstract out of all the people. It's just that those people that tend to take the test tend to be more abstract. Right, so from Kristen. Important to note the subjective importance, not tried and tested and preferred in society, but tried and tested and preferred by me. I think guardians pick up tips from everywhere and remember that information and will try it in their lives, keeping the things that fit improve the guardian system's relationships. Now, Kristen is a very intelligent guardian as well, so she's going to do a bit more thinking for herself, and she's going to notice more when or any kind of authorized advice doesn't work, but the instinct is still there to go towards what works. And so as I put this note here, this shows how Kristen is putting TE before SI. What worked? And again, it's drawing it on her personal memory as well of and preferred by me. What has empirically worked for her? We have to be careful not to describe guardians as robots running socially constructed algorithms. They are better described as well adapted to their particular culture and as knowing how to progress within the social system. They go through the proper channels. So due to its guardian temperament, ISTJ is less FE allergic than INTJ. So I'm going to say something about Kristen's TE. So Kristen will help businesses set up their processes and procedures, and she's going off how other businesses have used those processes, those procedures, and she has the ability with sort of accentuated NE to be able to see, and this is how NE and SI can work together, where, oh, that's like this, and it's going towards what has worked, that's like this, and so you can do it that way. And because she's a sort of an accomplished ESTJ, she can take that process, and so it's still going towards what has worked, the safe, the tried, and the true, and adapt that towards the present business and helping that business to, again, set up its processes and that lot. So this is like high level ESTJ kind of stuff. So yeah, so when you, but you can see in her this guardian, and a very intelligent guardian, but there's still that instinct to go towards what has worked in the past, but she's intelligent enough to adapt towards circumstances and that, but her preference is to go towards what has worked, and but that TE filter there of what has worked. Whereas with the NTPs, we would be more likely to do it our own way to show how clever we are, and then maybe mess up, because the NTPs value ingenuity almost too much at times. Yeah, right. So that's an example there of, say, SI in the second slot, and where in Kristen's case, so here, that she's putting the TE first, but she has that instinct to go towards what has worked. And if you were to talk about it, it says, well, it's more efficient, Ben. We don't mess up that way. Right. And if you want to see, I've done a video with Kristen where she gives me some feedback on my description of SI. Right. So, yeah, that should be in my SI playlist. So, again, so yes, situational SI. Again, because mainly, so in talking about Kristen, she's going to have this default sort of empiricalizing attitude of being sort of out in the world and aware of all of the TE data. So, in saying the difference between ISTJ and ESTJ, the ESTJ is going to be more readily accepting to the data and the information coming in than, say, ISTJ, which would be a little bit more rigid, because the ESTJ is more in the world and more in the TE. So it's just this idea of the T first and SI second. And so, yeah, it would be more adaptable and more readily going towards with that thing about going with the facts on the ground. ESTJ is going to be more ready to adapt than ISTJ. Also, here's a factor. When you're adapting in those situations, it frequently involves other people, and ESTJ has better people skills than ISTJ on average, just through being an extrovert. And then the FE is a contrarian alternative, and yeah. Right, so do I need to say anything about ESFJ? Okay, that's slot one. Hang on a minute, that's not right. That's ESFJ. That's how ESFJ uses FE. Right, yeah. So again, SE is coming first, and again, it really is auxiliary towards. And I'm just going to put that on screen if you want to read what I've written about, because I just thought it wasn't worth it for me to spend all my time writing all these profiles out. But I might write 8 of them out at least and put them in a book when it's a tie-in book with my Dramedy Woman housemates. So yeah, because then there'd be some money in it. Right. So again, it pretty much goes to what I said before. SI in slot 2 is still going to be a big part of the temperament. So for example, ESFJs and ESTJs are still guardians with the SI there. So it shows that the SI is powerfully determinative of someone's temperament. And just as SE is powerfully determinative of someone's temperament when it's in the wheelhouse. So the in your wheelhouse. So FE and SI are in the wheelhouse of the ESFJ, the collaborator guardian. So now we get to a completely different kettle of fish. Completely different kettle of fish. Because now we have SI and it's unvalued. And you got this, let's just say something here about, okay, fish is water. Tight fish doesn't know it's wet with this function. So I think I'll just leave it there so I can talk about this. Let it settle down for a while. So you've got this auxiliary SE in ISTP here, the contender artisan, and so they're going to be doing all the conservatism and that lot. That's out of the window. They're doing the SE stuff. They're taking the risks because that's exciting. They don't see it. What do you mean risky? It's exciting. If you concentrate on what you're doing, then you're not going to get in trouble. I can do this. I like the challenge. Again, though, up for the fight, up for the contest. Not boring, highly stimulated. SE values coming in now. So, how does ISTP use SI? And so I'm thinking that, so what the EEG data would show is that ISTP is using a lot of the back areas of the neocortex. Sorry, neocortices, because that's one cortex, and that's one cortex, and that's another one. So neocortices, and cortex, I think, is Greek for bark. Right, so, because that's what the surface of the brain looks like. Anyway, so those areas are drawn on. So ISTP has good visual imagination. So what I would say is that in ISTP, that you've not got the rigidity of the socionics might think so, but socionics is wrong when it comes to IS types. Say no more. I've done a whole video on that, 10 reasons why they're wrong on IS types. So you can search that out if you're so minded. So if we go through those features of SI, the conservatism for ISTP, no. The rich sensory imagination, the ability to say, so this might be a reason why. So Tesla, was he ENTP? Could he be ISTP? Because he had the ability, he said, although he was also a bit of a BSer, because he said that he could come up with a death ray that could kill whole armies, and he tried to sell that to the US Army. No takers. So with SI, so that stuff about the mental imagery, and so Tesla had the ability to build an invention in his mind to see if it would work, almost like he could go into like a computer aided design via his imagination, and that sort of like visuospatial intelligence. And so I would imagine that ISTJs and ISTPs are likely to have, on average, very high visuospatial intelligence, especially if it's what it has to imagine. So it's like what Dario wrote on the on there. Visualize, build, rotate image using the back of the neocortices. So and that can be, and in the predisposed role of so again, like with Tesla, like seeing though. See, with Tesla, you'd have to like I have not researched him. Like you have to decide between have we got ESTP. Sorry, have we got ENTP or ISTP? Because sometimes those two can overlap. I mean, right. You have to look at the difference between tactical and strategic, and look for the level of SE as well versus NE. Right. So then, anything else with SI? The other aspects of SI, the SI harmonizing doesn't so much come through with that type. I can give an example where it does though. If I go onto the next type, which would be ISFP, where the SI harmonizing would come through in that you can get ISFP nurses who are very resistant to being told. Yeah, they can be very resistant if they're told something that they object to ethically. Right. So so that harmonizing there, so you can get ISFP nurses, and so that's where they tend to be, they are better in say a casualty emergency room situation than say an ISFJ nurse, because SE good under pressure. And the SI there is, again, you've got the sensory imagine, you've got the SI in terms of the SI harmonizing, the taking care of people. The SI imaginative, useful in the predisposed role of ISFJ, which is towards the composer. So I would say, if you look at Pat Patterson, I've read a lot of Pat Patterson's books when I spent 3 or 4 years getting into songwriting. I wrote a song, but like, hang on a minute, I'm not good at music. But it helped me with writing artisan characters. So I have like a lot of characters who are, they've got quite a lot of consonant speech, and even one of them, yeah, well, you'll see what Tamsy does in season A of Woman Housemates. Yeah, so this SI is, and Pat Patterson would talk about, it's even in that graphic. I think Pat Patterson's ISFP. He does not like he does not like songs that go all over the place. So he would not like a Pet Shop Boys song. He wants prosody, everything tightly integrated. I'm thinking, everything is tightly integrated and working together. It's like no tangents whatsoever. And it's like, I'm thinking, this guy does not like any. And I'm thinking it's highly likely he's an accommodator, artisan, and ISFP. So is ISFP with a PhD in philosophy and poetry, I believe. So, but there's something here. Yeah, songwriting without boundaries, Pat Patterson. So again here, this is where that SI imaginative would be drawn on. The Jungian SI, the subjective sensation there. When a lyric stimulates and provokes your senses, you draw on images from your own experiences. So that's like getting into SI, your own experiences. And so that's going to be different when different people are reading it, because they have different experiences. You feel Mike Reed's and Anand Shamlin's words with your stuff. They involve you, so the song becomes about you. That's the power of sense-bound writing. It pulls the listener into the song using his own memories as the song's material. So the listener's experience has a subjective side to it. Yeah, consistent with folks reacting differently to the same music. Or it might be someone reacting differently to the same music at a different point in their life because the experiences have changed. His or her life. Again, right, there we go. So let's go back to ISFP. That is ISFP. And so that is, and so the temperament stuff is not there. The guardian temperament stuff is not there unless the ISFP is Enneagram 6 fixated. And then there'd be a little bit more conservatism there, but there'd be like split as well. We'd want to do some SE exciting stuff. So ISTP is drawing on the sensory imagination part of SI, not the build rotate image. So usually if we're going towards the stereotype of the mechanic kind of ISTP, very useful. Like I said, like Tesla building an invention in his mind to test it out before he then actually builds it. The way I do it is, I'll talk about thinking through camera moves in my mind before I storyboard those when I get to INTP, which will be last. No, it won't be last. It will be 5th or 10th or 9th. Yeah, probably 9th or 10th. Right. So, and then I talked about how the SI harmonizing would also be drawn on in ISFP. But again, the SE is more valued than the SI. So in this club, this shows here. So this slot here, 3 boxes are ticked. Valued, in green, valued, default, and a club function. Now here, this also ticks 2 boxes, default and club. And here it ticks valued and club. So why is this So why is SE more important than SI? They both tick two boxes. See, the thing is, because valued, unvalued is more important than default situational in the club. In the other club, it's different because the degree of value, the valuing, has gone down. The function you most value is the dominant function, then the secondary, then the tertiary, and then the quaternary, the inferior. So in here, SE is valued. So here, the dichotomy of valued, so valued is more important than default. In the club, in the counter club, default is more important than valued. Right. So now it's for SI in, right, again, backseat driver. So ESTP. So when you get to the SE DOMs, the SI really is sort of getting ignored a lot of the times. But you'll notice that SE DOMs, most SE DOMs have the self-preservation. They know when, oh, leave it, mate. No, it's not worth it. So it's not, they're not completely oblivious to risk. That is SE in its most crude form. Someone just taking ridiculous risks. A lot of SE DOMs that say on the rush streets or whatever, like if you want to do extreme like stereotypes of SE, say street kids in Brazil, there's going to have the rough and tough SE stuff, but they're also going to have the SI self-preservation backseat driver part of them, which is like, hey, back off, look at the size of him sort of situation. So it's not, they're not completely, they're not oblivious to risk. It's so when it's, there's a sort of a balance there. They know when to be assertive, when to be awesome, and also when to back off and not go too far. And they can get by and survive in that self-preservation aspect of SI. So that's how I would sort of that's how because it's not the case that all SE DOMs are reckless. No, they're not. And usually the SE DOMs that are reckless are like teenage 14-year-old boy SE DOMs. And when they get older, they'll probably go learn from experience. It's like, oh, don't do that. They've still got that preference to do the SE stuff, but there's that, they've learnt those SI lessons. Learn the consequences to one's actions. So, in other words, what I'm saying is, if you've got someone with really strong SE, it's healthy to have some that balanced by SE in the back, have that backseat driver. If you imagine the metaphor, the backseat driver of like, hey, calm down, like take a step back. You know, you can't take on those 10 other guys on your own, no matter how tough you are. You know, look, there's 10 of them and they've got knives and guns, and you've just got your hands. Right? Get a grip. Right. So again, it's not a case of just SE, go for it. There's going to be a certain degree of SI then. It's getting in the right balance. Right. That's part of it. Also, I'd argue that that could also be explained by SE harmonizing, which is reading the situation and adapting and not just going into assertive Mike Tyson kind of SE. There was a fight between Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis, and Lennox Lewis and he actually said afterwards, I disciplined him. And afterwards, Mike Tyson was calling Lennox Lewis sir, because Lennox Lewis, he schooled Mike Tyson. Yeah. Right. Got him with some good uppercuts. Now, anyhow. So, any differences with ESFP? Again, just knowing to get a grip. Like maturity coming through, knowing that you can't just, you know, they might want to be have that Charlie Sheen life. There's the bit where it's like some instinct comes in. Okay, I got to get through this. I got to, like, damn it, I got to do the safe thing. It's like, yeah. don't really want to, but I have to. Because there is that self-preservation there, because the SE Dom is in the realities of the world, which also means that there are, you could argue it like this. How about this? Aware of danger, aware of what he or she can do, but also aware of danger. Whereas, say, in this area, an any Dom could be oblivious to that kind of SI or an ENTJ or ENFJ. Whereas the SE Dom is, again, because it's got that situational awareness going on. And it's like knowing when to attack, when to defend, when it's not worth it. Yeah, so backseat driver. Again, situational. Sometimes, again, you got the SE Dom, especially if it's ESTP. It's like the STP might think it's big and it's tough, but someone comes along and it's like, look at the size of him, or look at the size of her if it's a woman. And it's like, yeah. Or if it's a female ESTP, and it's like, I'm not going down that dark alley on my own. I'm not going down there. So now we've got SI in slot 5. Now we've got it where it's a club function, a counter club function. And so, because you've got this preference for intuiting before SI. So I would say SI here. Now, partly because of shockingly bad SE in INFP and INTP, where these types are not the toughest. INFP and I, like, we are averse to pressure situations, and so because of that adversity towards pressure situations, we will go towards SI, because we are, again, allergic, binary, Achilles heel, SE. Now the binary is where in pressure situations we can just overreact, and it's like completely on, completely off, and it's like if we're poked, we either don't react or react too far, because our reaction is proportional to the degree of poking that we have felt. And so we look like we've been rattled or something. So we're not good under pressure. It's not nuanced. And so we go more towards this SI, especially in the self-preservation area. So avoiding sort of these, especially assertive SE situations. And we go defensively into SI. But we don't have the let's have a look at a little bit of theory there about the dabbling. Yeah, if I put that on there, if I read that, slot 5, dabbling tertiary, has low endurance, hence the name, dabbling. The type has more short-lived, eyes bigger than its belly motivation than ability for this function. Overplays its moderate hand. It can come across as someone having pretensions for the function in slot 5, i.e. the person is not as good at this function as it thinks it is because the person does not fully commit to the function. It only dabbles in it, unless there is a non-type factor to encourage its use, especially the requirements of someone's job. So, for example, an INTJ that is a counsellor has to do more FI, or an INFJ that is a philosopher does more TI. Right. And then the beneficiary shift. Yeah. INFJ acting like INTP, ENTJ acting like ESTP, especially the male ENTJ sticking the chest out trying to be Ty Lopez. Yeah. Doesn't have the body language of Wesley, $1 billion virgin. Right. Yes, what the heck, it's not symmetrical, read slot 6. Get onto that later. And I've mentioned all that before about the fact that, yeah, if you just read that red about slot 6, what the heck, but we're on slot 5. So, slot 5. The dabbling SI. So, I know Hannah on the channel has talked about it. So she's an accommodator idealist, so INFP, and she's going into nursing, end of life. So there you're doing more SI. That's sort of SI harmonizing. And again, that's sort of consistent with it's easier for an accommodator to do the harmonizing subfunction because there's an overlap between Keirsey responsive accommodation, which is ISFP, ISFJ, INFP, and INTP, and the harmonizing subfunctions. So, for example, with me, I am harmonizing all these theories. See, I harmonize them. Dabbling tertiary. So again with the SI, so you've got an INFP there who's actually sort of an end of life care nurse, so doing that sort of SI harmonizing, but it's for the job as well. So there's that part of SI. I would also argue that SI imaginative, and again the conservative part would come through in the avoidance of hardcore SE situations. Yeah. So, but with SI imaginative, it would be used if the INFP. But again, it's like what does which functions does a particular task draw on? If you got an INFP that's into creative writing, then it could draw on the SI, especially if a novelist. Yeah. I will talk about myself in a moment about how I use SI. Yeah. Yes. Because now, again, a little bit. So I am going to be spending May, April, and June. Let's have a look. Is it May, April, and June? What am I talking about? May, June, and July. That's it. May, June, and July on storyboarding. That's going to be red time, and then casting. There's going to be more casting. Is going to be will be green time. And during that story, I aim to storyboard one scene a day. Now, what that means is I'm going to be mentally thinking how to record this scene and that. Now, here's the tricky bit. There's imagine it, but it's an SI imaginative. How about this? Is you're getting synergy between the subject, usually an actor or actress, and the camera. So you have to imagine them moving at the same time, especially if you've got countering, where you've got the object moving and then the camera, the viewpoint of that object moving at the same time, say usually in an opposite direction. That training up of SI imaginative, that build, rotate, image. It's like, imagine a scene where you go, okay, you can imagine someone going in, the camera pushing into someone, and someone gets bigger in the frame. Okay, well, at the same time, do that. Imagine that person then turning to one side, and then the camera also then going around, and then building that up and training that up. That's SI imaginative. And then thinking, okay, that'll work, and then doing diagrams for other people to be able to execute that. So that's SI, that's one form of SI imaginative. Or imagining the scene, because usually in writing, it's you design the scene and all of the plot, and so that's a lot of TI with reasoning in there as well. When you get to actually writing the scene and you know the characters, then it's like FI imaginative, and you're in the characters reacting as the characters. But then you're also thinking about what are the actual physicalities of the room that they're in and that lot, and the sensory aspects and what people can see and what has been shown. And then you're going again into more subjective SI imaginative area. Right. Anything else about SI? The SI harmonizer. Not so much as also the SI with TI. I can say with ISFP that loop of going over the same old FI feelings and going round and round, especially if you get Enneagram 4 fixated, just going through old insults. Oh, I remember what he said about me. I do that as well, though. All right, so and TI with SI, and remember Dario explained to me that you can get with an INTP that it can get stuck and go through the same old frameworks. So, Sheldon Cooper, autistic genius, I think would be the best classification for him. Autistic genius INTP. And he has that extreme preference for SI that early on, where it's like he has those ISTJ traits. And so you've got that SI, and he's going through and wanting to sticks to what he knows, but he's got the INTP part there, which is like building the frameworks and all that sort of stuff. But it's that sticking to the tried and true. I sit here on the sofa. I do it like this. I stick to my routine. That accentuated, but in his case, extra accentuated SI. It's less so with my favorite character, Amy Fowler. Yeah, and she does not have that as much, but that SI in terms of going over the same old model and sticking to a system, and it's like, or like the Keirsey. No, I respect the Keirsey system, but like they have their own colors for true colors. I'm like, no, I'm not learning those colors. I have my own colors. Artisans are red, Guardians are blue, Idealists are green, and Rationals are violet. That's it. End of discussion. I'm sticking with that. I am stuck in my TI ways there. Or what you can see is with socionics, a lot of socionics people, they get stuck in Model A, and it's got the SI with the TI. I am stuck in thinking in this way that is a little bit of a smile raiser for certain INTPs who know better. Right. Certain INTPs and certain lots of people who know that thinking is not purely external. There's a subjective side to it. Ask 10 people what empathy means and ask them to write it down, and then see if what they've written down gives exactly the same meaning. Or if you ask those 10 people, what is the difference between empathy and sympathy? Right. Why do people misunderstand? Oh, that's not what I meant, but you said that word. Right. So again, thinking is not purely external. There is subjective thinker. I know that because we INTPs have a problem getting our ideas across because it is so subjective, especially when you're combining lots of different ideas. So when I talk about Keirsey, it's well, I've not read that bit. I don't know about that. You're going to have to explain it. Right, so now it's SI slot 6. So that's going to be for the NI-DOMs. Right, so how does INFJ use FI? Well. So circumstances are going to be a big factor. So let's go with the INFJ mother versus the INFJ single person. Or if you can substitute INFJ single dad with young children for this. So the situation of the INFJ. So imagine an INFJ that's living in the 19th century, is living in a stately home, doesn't have to, and should basically do what she likes intellectually. And it's like, I'm just going to sit at home, Papa, and read all these philosophy books and do, say, Enneagram 4 stuff and just like sit in it and have the servants do all the SI stuff. Versus, so that's the preference. Versus the situation where you have INFJ woman, and it's like, his husband's not helping out that much, but no, he says he's knackered. Right. And it's like, okay, the role that I am in is sort of demanding that I've got to do a lot of SI stuff for everybody around here, and I'm not too pleased about it. And so the sort of SI stuff that is sort of demanded by the situation versus INFJ woman who's sort of stuck in and like, oh, I'm going to become a novelist, Papa. or poets, right? So it's like just going through the same thing, and so the situation, and so to a certain extent, and because the NI-DOM can see how things can go and are aware of causality, and it's like, oh, I better do that, or there's a sort of access to cautiousness that, oh, better do that, or that will happen, and so it can't. But it is a pretty much of a drudgery. That said, certain aspects of SI, so the SI imaginative, more access to that again is in the poetry or with the reading. There's like that sensory aspect, at least as a starting point for NI sort of like iconic motifs and symbology and that. Yeah. It also depends on how integrated it becomes, the NI into S. So for example, like I said, when I gave the example of the INFJ mother, just through practice, there's going to be more, and there's going to be more instincts as a mother coming through as well, and the SI will be more developed because of that. Or as I said, the single father INFJ in that situation, that would be developed, and also it would be a case of doing FI for people that you love, and so that would develop it as well. Right. INTJ. Now, why would INTJ do SI? Now, INTJ is more likely to say, now the INTJ woman is more likely to say, no, you kids are doing this. You're going to do these chores because I hate this. This is boring. I don't care so much about your feelings. Right. But there's going to be some SI there. And again, like close bonds and connections and that. So the FI, the way the FI is, might lead to some, but they're not going to find it a lot of fun. But again, the SI imaginative would be there. Working with the NI, like sort of fantasies, dreams, strategic vision, all that sort of stuff. The cautiousness would go well with the NI because if you look at the predisposed roles, INTJ, the contender rational, is predisposed towards contingency planning, seeing how things can go wrong, sort of a negative view. NI, oh, that's going to go there and do that. Might be a bit bearish in investing actually. INTJ, oh, if that crashes down, might be good at shorting. The INTJ, shorting stocks, and so there's a predisposition towards contingency planning with cautious protecting, and so there can be some access there of, oh, that's going to go wrong. We can try and avoid it going wrong, but then when it does go wrong, it's hard to like protect and the situation and stabilize it. So some SI cautiousness can be accessed by the NI-DOM, but it doesn't want that SI cautiousness to stop the development. It wants to see it doesn't, because the SI too much because the SI would be like, let's just, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. No, the NI-DOM, I want to develop it. So again, it's a little bit running there in the background, and again, it's integrating the two. So it's very good to integrate these two. And it's one of the things that Dario wrote about. So it says there, slot can synergize with the dominant. So for example, if someone is an irrational type, all of the irrational functions can be integrated. So what that basically means is that slots 1, 4, 7, and 6 can be integrated, because you can see there, these are all irrational functions. And in another type, again, there's another irrational type there, these will be integrated. And so it'd be the there you go, judging type. They're all the judging functions, so they can all be integrated. So let's get back to where I was. Right, so I did the integer. So now I'm on slot 7. So slot 7. So we need slot 7 SI. Right. So ENTPs. Now again, recklessness. I was talking before about the slot 4 SI versus slot 7 SI. So, how can I put this? ESTP woman versus ENFP woman. And we've got ESTP woman with slot 4 SI. EST woman's going to think, probably not, it might be a bit dangerous for me to go to that country. It might be a little bit dangerous for a woman over there. ENFP might be a little bit, oh, that's a bigoted view of that particular culture. I'll be all right. So, you know, not all countries are equally safe for women. So there might be a little bit. So that thing of like less aware of dangers. So we could say in comparing those two slots, 4 and 7, that the ESTP woman is more aware of physical dangers and potential threats than the ENFP woman. And even so, but that said, through this practice, the ENFP woman is going to develop quite a lot of SE, and they can, pretty much all extroverts can handle themselves, because again, it's a default function. So yeah, so you can get a lot of ENFPs. That said, a lot of ENFPs can handle themselves, and so that said, these sort of adventuresome ENFP women who are putting themselves in to some potentially dangerous circumstances can nevertheless read other people's intentions if they've got their FE going. Right, so I guess I've seen a lot of ENFP females with good SE. I mean, seriously good SE. And it's like, wow, you're very coordinated and talented. Wow. Right. So there is a lack of cautiousness with any dog, because it's like the opportunity, the possibility is it can be sort of carried away, especially when it's NF. And it's like, oh, that's an interesting. I'll go there. Yeah, adventuresome. But like I said, just through experience and through all that, the SE is going to be good enough. So, like I said, yeah. It's an extreme example there. All right. I just thought of something then and then decided not to. Right. So it's, what about ENTP? Is that going to be any different for ENTP? Now, arguably, ENTP could be even in even more trouble because not read someone's intentions that well. But they tend to be more cynical, though. Yeah, so ENTP woman would probably think, yeah, it's not safe for me to go there. Yeah. So I'm going with the stereotypes here of ENFP, but it is true because ENFPs love to explore other cultures because it's part of the NE with the NF, and they can learn a lot and broadening the mind and all of that. But they have to be aware of potential dangers, right? And that's going to learn from experience, right? So, like I said, you got that pretty weak 4th quartile SI there, which is sort of relating to self-preservation. ENFPs, ENTPs, easily bored. Yeah, easily bored, frequently Enneagram 7. Going towards excitement, away again, yeah. So I do think the SE DOMs have got more awareness of danger, and they'll have an SI here and that backseat driver. As for what they are suggestible for, it's suggestible for care, as in, oh great, you could be a house husband and do all my stuff for me. If you're thinking about, or the ENTP male is looking for ISFJ female. So, but basically, of either sex, they're looking for a partner who would do the SI stuff for them because they find it boring as a whole. The NE DOMs, right? because they're sort of opposed, the NE and the SI. They can work together, as I gave an example there with Kristen. In that you're finding the similarities to what has worked before in comparable situations. But in here, they're opposite in that SI do the sort of same thing the same old way, and NE sort of new and different and a new opportunity. So those are sort of opposite in that respect, besides the difference in SN and inverting. And inverting. I don't call it vertness because it's verting because it's a verb. It's because introversion is not a thing. As NLP people would say, you can't put it in a wheelbarrow. It's a process. It's a verb. If you direct your attention outwards, you are extroverting. If you introspect, you are introverting. Right. So I think we're on slot 8 now. Suggestible inferior. Hang on a minute. Yeah, now I can talk about what the heck slot 6. Oh, should have done that before. But now it's about slot 7. Right, so that's why that's stronger. So as I said before, so the SE is actually stronger than the SI. So when these sometimes naive NE DOMs get themselves in trouble, they know how to handle themselves. So usually. So if you're a parent to an NE DOM child, suggest self-defense. They have to get themselves into a situation where out of naivety. Right. So that's why SE is stronger than SI in the NE DOMs. Also EP, so they get themselves into these SE situations and learn. So again, all this function, again, it depends on circumstances. Certain circumstances will draw on functions more than others. And just by extroverting a lot, as an extrovert, they're going to encounter a lot of SE stuff and so get better at it. The next one is ENFJ. Oh yeah, we did a video with Holly on the channel and she basically overworked herself. That is a frequent thing with ENFJ and ENTJ. They overwork themselves and they don't know, they don't listen to their bodies. They don't know when they're really exhausted. And they're sort of like, again, all or nothing. Again, workaholics, just too much. And I remember once Megan Lavota gave an example of her mother asked her, where does it go? She was sort of helping her move. And she says, where does it go? And it's like, what? And it's like, well, Megan, a place for everything and everything in its place. It helps to know where something goes. Right. Oh, where's that thing? We'll go to the place where it should be kept. Right. But, okay. How can I put this? I don't want to get in trouble from YouTube. So, a certain person, certain Austrian man, I won't use the term gentleman, a certain Austrian man in the 1940s, and suddenly died in 1945. Yeah. Anyway, so this guy, Mr. H. Mr. H, so we could say in initials AH, and I don't mean Adam Hughes. So AH, Mr. H, talked about conversations with the then current leader of Spain, who was really an ISTJ sort of conservative, who was pretending to be like Mr. H and Mr. M in Italy. Damn the AI and its ability to scan for keywords in videos. So Mr. H talked about his meetings with Mr. F from Spain, and he said that it was incredibly boring and he never wanted to be in a meeting with him again because Mr. F was always going on about like crops and that lot and lots of logistical stuff, and that kind of like SI detail really bored ENFJ Mr. H. And I've done a video with Jonathan on how on why Mr. H was ENFJ. Yeah. So, and acantophobic 6. So, and as for ENTJ, I can't remember his name. There's a guy there who he did the Amiga 1 project, I think it was. And he sort of went grey overnight. And he was sort of like bringing back the Amiga. And I think I see him as ENTJ. I'd have to have a look. I'd have to do a quick Google for it. So, Amiga. Is it Amiga X1000? Right, and what was the name of the person who did it? And his name? Amiga X1000. Right, who was the... Well, this guy, like the stress... So I seen this guy as a... Anyway, so the guy who sort of like tried to relaunch the Amiga, entrepreneur, ENTJ, and I saw him and like came back, he was all completely white. And he said, and it was the stress of it got to him because these ENTJ sort of workaholics in this sort of CEO sort of role. Yeah, they don't know how to relax. They have problems relaxing. So that is so. In that respect, ENTJ is weak at SI harmonizing, sort of like paying attention to the bodily needs. I've also heard it said that they can tend to have poor memories when it's sort of like surface details, or some little details. What else? Maybe so ENFJ is also cooperative, so that would make it the other part of S. I'm not so sure. But certainly minutiae and details can be a problem for, or they find it really boring. And it's that thing of not paying attention to the internal bodily harmony. Yeah, so I think that is it for SI slot by slot in my model. Right then. Right, is there anything else that I've ever written anything about the slots in here? Oh, slot 8. There you go. Yeah. The function in slot 8 is the least valued of the lot. It is the Achilles heel of the psyche, the weakest function and the most disliked in others. Remember, Mr. H didn't like it about Mr. F. Can be conflict with others who resemble the type which has this function in its dominant. Usually the type avoids activities withdrawn in slot 8, but in some cases it can be binary, as in all or nothing, lacks appropriate degree, sense, it tends to be totally avoided or used in the blunt instrument way without skill. Right, rigid plans, right, okay. That'll be when we get on to how to use anything else. Oh, here, this is about slot 4, about energy and information and internal information. I think people have problems understanding that because they don't give me any feedback on it. It's just like, it's like I just don't think they're appreciating the point, but I could be wrong. I probably am wrong. Yeah, but it is a nuanced thing. Yeah, the level of information changes the amount of energy required. Right.